I didn't mean for it to linger that long. The hug, I mean. It was supposed to be quick, polite. A greeting between cousins who hadn't seen each other in years. But somehow, when she wrapped her arms around me, the world outside the small car repair shop just thinned out. Her perfume was faint, something warm, like vanilla left on a windowsill. And for a second, I forgot how to breathe. I had just finished closing the shop for the day, hands still smelling faintly of motor oil. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, flickering like they couldn't decide if the day was over or not. I heard her before I saw her, her voice, low and certain, calling my name in that tone older relatives use when they've already decided how the conversation should go. Maya. I turned, wiping my palms on a rag. She stood by the door, framed by the fading light. Hair tied back, loose cardigan slipping off one shoulder. Her eyes caught the light and held it just long enough for me to look away. You still fix things for free, or do you charge family now? She teased, the corner of her mouth curling. Depends, I said, trying to sound casual. What's broken? She lifted a small silver bracelet, its clasp bent out of shape. Me, apparently. I can't even fasten this thing without help. It was nothing. Really, it should have been nothing. I took the bracelet from her hand, careful not to touch her skin, but the metal was warm from her body heat. She leaned against the counter, watching me work with the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need to fill silence with words. When I handed it back, she didn't put it on immediately. She just looked at it, then at me, like she was about to say something else, but changed her mind halfway. You're different, she said finally. Taller. Quieter. Quieter. She smiled. You used to talk too much when you were younger. You'd follow me around at family gatherings, asking about my job, my car, my books. I remember thinking, this kid is too curious for his own good. I laughed, though something inside me tightened. Guess I grew out of that. I don't think you did, she said softly. The conversation drifted after that, from engines to family news, from the weather to some movie she'd watched twice because she liked the way silence felt in it. The more she spoke, the more I found myself listening not to her words, but to the small pauses between them. The ones where she'd look at the floor, or at her hands, or somewhere far away that wasn't the present moment. At some point, she reached out, just a small gesture, to brush a strand of hair from her face. Her fingers grazed mine by accident. I don't even think she noticed, but I did. Every nerve in my body did. When she finally said she should leave, I walked her to the door. The air outside had cooled, carrying the faint smell of rain on dust. We stood there for a moment, two people who weren't sure how to end a conversation that felt like it had been waiting to happen for years. Then she stepped forward and hugged me. It wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. Her cheek brushed against my jaw. Her breath was steady, her grip surprisingly firm. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know what to do with my hands. When she pulled away, she smiled. You're still quiet, she said. And before I could answer, she was gone, her car pulling away into the soft dusk, taillights blinking through the drizzle. I stood there long after, the warmth of her still clinging to my shirt. I told myself it was just a hug, just family, but my heart refused to believe it. She came again a week later. I wasn't expecting her, though a part of me, if I'm honest, had been waiting for something to happen that would give her an excuse. Her car had a faint rattle in the front wheel. Just a sound, she said when she called that morning. It's probably nothing. But you know how I am. I can't stand the not knowing. By the time she arrived, the afternoon heat had softened into a pale, golden quiet. I had the garage door half open, the smell of oil and sunlight mixing in the air. She stepped out of the car wearing sunglasses too big for her face, like armor. Don't judge me, she said, smiling. I hit a pothole. I wouldn't dare. I tried to sound easy, but something in her expression, an exhaustion that didn't match her teasing tone, made me look twice. The laugh lines near her eyes seemed deeper today, her lipstick faintly smudged like she'd put it on in a hurry. While I worked, she leaned against the wall, arms folded, watching. She talked in pieces, half thoughts, unfinished sentences. About her office, the never-ending emails, how silence had become her favorite company. I listened more than I spoke. She always filled the air just enough to keep me there. When I wiped my hands and crouched beside the tire, I caught the reflection of her legs in the chrome, crossed at the ankle, shifting slightly, as if she was uncomfortable but didn't want to leave. "You don't talk much," she said after a while. "You talk enough for both of us." Her laugh came soft, short, and it slipped into silence again. She looked at me, then away. "Sometimes I think talking is just a way to stop yourself from feeling." I didn't know what to say to that. After fixing the rattle, I offered her coffee. The machine in the corner hadn't worked right in months, but it made the space smell human, somehow. She stood near the counter, stirring her cup even after the sugar had dissolved. When she finally looked at me, her eyes weren't guarded anymore. They were tired, honest in a way that scared me a little. "You ever get the feeling," she said quietly, "that people expect you to stay the same, even when you're not?" I nodded, but she wasn't really asking for an answer. Her hand brushed mine as she reached for the napkin, a light, unplanned touch. I didn't move. Neither did she. For a second, everything, the ticking clock, the wind through the door, felt suspended. Then she pulled back, clearing her throat. "You should charge me this time." "I won't," I said. She smiled again, but this one didn't reach her eyes. "That's dangerous." When she left, I noticed she'd forgotten her coffee cup on the counter, half full, lipstick marking the rim. I told myself I'd return it next time. But that night, when the shop was dark and quiet, I caught myself standing beside it, fingers tracing the faint warmth still left in the porcelain. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I didn't throw it away. It started raining that evening. One of those sudden, heavy rains that turned the sky gray long before sunset. She called around 7. Said she was nearby, her voice half drowned in the static of bad reception. "I just needed somewhere to wait it out," she said. "Didn't think it'd pour like this." I told her she could come by. The shop was already closed. The lights were dim except for the small desk lamp flickering against the rain-spattered window. She arrived wrapped in her beige coat, drops clinging to her hair like glass. "God," she exhaled, shaking off the rain. "I'm soaked." I handed her a towel I'd used to dry my hands earlier. She didn't seem to care that it smelled faintly of grease. "Still better than standing outside," she said, smiling without much energy. We sat near the workbench, the sound of rain filling the silence between us. The smell of wet pavement drifted in through the half-open door. I poured her some tea from the kettle I used for instant noodles. It wasn't much, but it felt right. Small, quiet, ordinary. She kept glancing toward her phone. The screen would light up, then go dark. Once it rang. She let it. The ringtone cut through the air like something sharp. "Don't you want to answer?" I asked. She shook her head. "It's no one important." But her hand trembled slightly as she set the phone face down. I didn't press her. I could feel that whatever name was on that screen wasn't something she wanted to explain. At some point, the lights flickered and went out completely. Just like that, the world went black, except for the thin light from the parking lot slipping through the rain. She laughed softly. "Guess I'm stuck here then." "Guess you are." For a while, neither of us said anything. The sound of rain softened into rhythm, steady, hypnotic. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Lower. "Do you ever wonder," she said, "how people decide where the line is? Between what's okay and what isn't?" I turned to her, but she wasn't looking at me. She was staring at her hands, rubbing her thumb against her wedding band. "No, not a wedding band. Just a ring that looked like one." "I don't know," I said. "Maybe they only notice it once they've already crossed it." She looked up then, eyes catching mine in the half-dark. Something in her expression flickered, an ache, or maybe recognition. Whatever it was, I felt it in my chest like a pulse. Thunder rolled outside, and she shivered. Without thinking, I reached out, brushing her arm lightly. Just enough for her to know she wasn't alone. She didn't move away, but she didn't move closer, either. Her breath hitched, then steadied. The rain slowed. The lights flicked back on, harsh and ordinary again. She blinked, breaking the moment. "I should go," she said, voice a little too even. "Yeah," I said, though my hand still hovered near where her arm had been. When she stepped outside, her phone buzzed again. She answered this time. I heard her say softly, "I'm fine. I just got caught in the rain." She didn't look back as she walked to her car. I watched her until the taillights disappeared into the wet dark, the echo of her voice still hanging in my head. I'd almost said something. Almost. And for the first time, I was glad I didn't. Days passed before she came again. No calls, no messages, just the quiet kind of absence that makes you question if you imagine the whole thing. Then one evening, she appeared at the shop door again, just as I was locking up. No rain this time. Just that faint, golden hour light that made everything look more fragile than it really was. You were hard to reach, I said before I could stop myself. I know, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't mean to be. Her eyes darted past me, into the dim interior of the shop. Can I come in for a minute? I stepped aside. She didn't wait for me to answer. The air inside smelled of oil and dust, but she didn't seem to mind. She walked slowly, fingers brushing the edge of a shelf, her ring catching the light. You ever think about how strange it is, she began. How we just talk? Like this? About nothing and everything. I leaned against the counter, unsure where this was going. Strange good or strange bad? She smiled faintly. Both. There was something in her tone. Tired, maybe, or careful. Like she was searching for the right edge to hold on to. I used to think I had my life figured out, she said. Now I just feel like I'm standing in a room that doesn't belong to me anymore. She looked up then, directly, almost accusingly. And somehow, I end up here. With you. I swallowed, unsure if she wanted an answer. The words I'd been holding back pressed against my throat, but I couldn't give them shape. She sat down on the old chair by the window, the one I used to pile with tools. You probably think I'm pathetic, she said softly. I don't. You should. Her laugh was small, broken at the edges. You're young, Ryan. You still think things mean something. I envy that. I don't know what I think, I said. I just know I don't want this to stop. That made her go still. The sound of a car passing outside filled the silence between us. When she finally spoke again, her voice cracked, not loudly, but enough to make my chest tighten. What are we doing? She asked. The question wasn't rhetorical. It hung there, trembling, dangerous, real. I opened my mouth, then closed it. There wasn't an answer that didn't sound like a lie. She stood then, brushing invisible dust from her jeans, trying to gather herself. This isn't supposed to be whatever it is, she said. You know that, right? I nodded, though the movement felt hollow. Then why do I keep coming back here? The question hit harder than anything before. She didn't wait for my reply. Her voice softened. I'm sorry, she whispered. I just don't know where else I feel like myself. The light outside had dimmed completely now. Shadows filled the corners of the room. She walked to the door, hand on the handle, but didn't open it right away. For a moment, she looked back. Not at me, but somewhere near me, like she couldn't bear to meet my eyes. And then, in the quietest voice, she said, Don't make this easier for me. Please. The door clicked shut behind her, and the echo stayed long after she was gone. She didn't come around for almost 2 weeks. No calls. No quiet visits. Nothing but the memory of her voice echoing in that dim shop. Don't make this easier for me. I tried not to think about it. Failed mostly. Every small thing reminded me of her. The scent of rain, the flicker of headlights through the garage door, even the old chair she used to sit in, still turned slightly toward the window. Then, one morning, I found a small envelope slipped under the door. No name, but I didn't need one. Her handwriting was unmistakable, looped letters that leaned a little to the right, like they were always in a hurry. Inside was a photo. It was faded, folded at the corners. Her, years younger, standing beside a man with kind eyes and an easy smile. His arm around her waist. They looked happy, but not staged. The kind of happy that happens in the middle of real life. Behind it, a note. Just a few words. He was your age when he died. I don't know how long I stared at it. The shop noises, tools clattering, a radio mumbling in the background, blurred into static. I didn't understand at first what she meant. Then I did. And everything. The guarded way she spoke, the silence that followed her laughter, the way her eyes softened when she looked at me, clicked into something I hadn't been ready to see. I called her that evening. She didn't answer. The next day, she came by. Did you get it? She asked, not even saying hello. I nodded, holding the photo between my fingers. She exhaled slowly, as if she'd been bracing herself. He was my fiancé, she said. It was a long time ago. I don't usually talk about him. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. She leaned against the counter like the air was too heavy to stand upright in. I thought I'd buried it. But when you talk, when you look at me. She stopped, shook her head. It's like hearing an echo I didn't know I still remembered. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to comfort her. Another part wanted to step away, to give her space, or maybe to protect myself from whatever this was turning into. She smiled faintly, eyes glistening but not breaking. You remind me of him sometimes. The way you listen. The way you stay quiet when most people fill the air with noise. That's not fair, I said, before I could stop myself. You shouldn't see me as him. I don't, she said softly. That's what scares me. We stood there in silence. The sound of the clock ticked too loudly. She reached for the photo in my hand, her fingers brushing mine. Keep it, she said. Maybe you'll understand why I can't, why I shouldn't. Her voice drifted off. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. When she turned to leave, I almost stopped her. Almost. But instead, I looked down at the photo, his arm around her, her smile untouched by time, and felt something inside me shift. Not jealousy, not confusion, just the quiet, unshakable ache of realizing I was never meant to be the first person to make her feel something again. She came after closing again. This time without a call, without a reason. Just the sound of her car pulling up outside, headlights cutting across the walls like they were searching for something lost. When she stepped in, I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. She looked worn, her coat still on, hair pulled back loosely like she'd left in a hurry. Her eyes found mine and didn't move. I shouldn't be here, she said. I know, but I didn't know where else to go. I nodded toward the chair by the window, the one that had somehow become hers. She sat, resting her hands in her lap, fingers twisting the ring she never took off. The silence between us wasn't tense anymore, just heavy, familiar. It filled the small space like a third presence, one we both learned to stop fighting. Before I learned how to be careful, I leaned against the counter, watching her trace circles along her palm, as if trying to erase a thought before it reached her mouth. And what am I supposed to do with that? I asked quietly. She looked up. Nothing. Just don't make me feel guilty for it. I could never. A long pause. The kind that stretches between people when words start to lose their shape. Then, softly, she said, he would have liked you. Her voice trembled, and this time she didn't hide it. I walked over, slowly, like approaching something that might vanish if I moved too fast. She didn't look up when I stopped in front of her. Her hands were still clasped, tight. I reached out, fingers brushing against hers. For a second, she didn't move. Then her grip loosened. Her hand slipped into mine, small and trembling but certain. That was all it took. One unguarded moment where everything we'd tried not to admit found its quiet truth. She didn't cry. Neither did I. There was nothing left to confess, no lines left to name. I don't know what this is, I said. And I don't know if we're supposed to know. Her gaze lifted, meeting mine. Maybe knowing would ruin it. We stayed like that. No promises, no explanations, just two people sitting too close in a room that suddenly felt too small for silence. Outside, the world carried on. Cars passing, lights flickering, life moving the way it always does. Inside, her head rested lightly against my shoulder. Not a gesture of need, but of acceptance. And for once, I didn't try to define what it meant. When she finally stood to leave, neither of us said goodbye. At the door, she looked back, eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. Take care of yourself, she whispered. You too. The door closed gently, and I stood there, hands still warm from hers. It wasn't a beginning. It wasn't an ending. Just the quiet collapse into something that had been waiting for both of us all along. It's been months since that last night. The shop still smells the same. Oil, dust, and faint traces of old coffee. But everything else feels different, quieter somehow. Like the air learned how to breathe slower. Sometimes, I catch myself glancing toward the door at closing time. Not expecting her, exactly, just remembering how it used to feel when she did walk in. The sound of her heels on concrete, The way she'd always pause before speaking, as if testing the weight of her words before setting them down between us. She doesn't come by anymore, but she doesn't need to. A few weeks after she left, I found her bracelet, the one I'd fixed the first day she showed up, resting on the workbench. The clasp still bent slightly, imperfect, human. I knew she'd left it on purpose. A quiet full stop to a sentence neither of us ever finished. At first, I told myself I'd return it. I even drove by her street once, parked down the block, engine running. But I didn't knock. I just sat there, watching the windows flicker with the kind of warm light you can't step into uninvited. That's when I understood something she'd been trying to say all along. That some connections aren't meant to be kept, only felt. Briefly, deeply. Enough to remind you that you're still capable of feeling it all. I still think about her sometimes, not in the way that hurts, but in the way that makes you grateful. She taught me that not every closeness needs to be named to be real. That love doesn't always need to end with promises. Sometimes it's enough that it existed, even for a short while, in a space where both people finally felt seen. I think she found some kind of peace, too. The last time we spoke, months ago, over a short message, she said she was trying to remember how to be gentle with herself. I told her that was a good place to start. She sent a heart emoji. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, when the rain hits the roof at night, I sometimes sit by the same window where she used to sit, the one that catches the streetlight just right. And for a few moments, I let the quiet feel full again. I don't wish we'd said more. I don't wish we'd done more. Because maybe love isn't about having someone. Maybe it's about being changed by them, even when they leave. She'll always be part of the silence that made me softer. And I think I'm okay with that. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?